Tanks, airplanes, trenches, and German helmets with spikes on their heads. That's right, it's top 10 messed up things that happened in the First World War. Number 10. Yikes at Ypres. Canadians, maple syrup, Tim Hortons, and for some reason a lot of famous comedians. I don't know why we have a lot of comedians, but we do. That's right, you know them, you love them. What you may not know is that we, for some reason, possess the ability to be the most effective forces in combat. Who would know? You wouldn't think that for a bunch of nice plaid wearing, hockey watching beer enthusiasts. Our metal was tested in the First World War, which really showed the world that Canada was here to stay. However, this came at the cost of many young men's lives. The Second Battle of Ypres comes to mind, where the Germans first used chlorine gas as a chemical weapon, which in case you were wondering was a huge no-no. I can only imagine the confusion and horror as yellow-green smoke crept its way across the field, then to cause such horrible effects on the soldiers, who were reduced to urinating in handkerchiefs just to breathe. I talked to the chief last night. He just came in from Moose Jaw, bud. Said that's not it. Number 9. Anglo-Franco blood. The Battle of the Somme was supposed to be a quick battle that would see a joint force of French and English soldiers pushing through the Somme River to break the German line of defense. There's really no such thing as a quick battle though, is there? A lot of the men were fresh and new and were eager to jump in only if they knew what awaited them. This list is going to be full of not so fun battles. The Somme was just that. The British suffered 58,000 casualties, with over a third being deaths. You can imagine how the excitement and eagerness to be in a war quickly left the young men's hearts and began to fill with dread. Trench warfare was not a joke. Mixing the new and deadly weapons that made up the First World War with the old world strategies and tactics, and you've got a recipe for annihilation. No thank you, I will pass. Number 8. Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. You probably know about this one, but man, it's kinda messed up. World War I was messy. It was costly, and it was paid in full by the men and women who lost their lives. America, while getting a very hard rap from the international community for joining the war very late, still put in a large effort into the First World War, and for that, lost many men to the cause. Like in all wars, after years of brutal fighting, the logistics can get a little muddy. Some soldiers' remains were simply just never found or identified. You can find these tombs all over the world, but perhaps it was the First World War that made it well known. And also perhaps the war to have the most unknown soldiers. Wherever you guys are, thank you for your service. Number 7. Poor Germany. The number 2 bad guy in movies besides spooky scary Russians is Germans, and let's be honest, we had to fight them off twice. It left a bad taste in the international community's mouth. When we talk about World War II, we can say that Germans were 100% the villains of that story. That's just how it goes. Along with its imperial and fascist sidekicks, Italy and Japan. However, for the First World War, it's not so simple. While Germany was one of the main contributors of the destruction in the war, I don't think it's fair to completely blame them for the war. However, history is written by the victors, and Germany didn't win that one. And that's what's kind of messed up, is the Treaty of Versailles, which made Germany pay back an absurd amount of money in reparations, almost an imaginary number, especially right after a war. It also saw them demilitarize the Rhineland and give some crucial land and strategic resources like the industrial goods and power of the Ruhr Valley. Germany got wrecked in a nutshell. This made Germany go through hard times, harder than most other countries at the time, and was a main contributor in the rise of fascism and history's favorite mustache man. Number 6. Failed art student. Speaking of a super evil dictator mustache man, he was a soldier in World War I. After spending his years as a mediocre artist at best, painting paintings and postcards for whatever little money he could. People say his artwork is good, but I think it sucks and his proportions are off. Nerd. Anyway, when the Great War broke out, he and many other young men felt inspired. The patriotism was alive and well. He regarded this time in his life in the trenches with his comrades to be some of the best. However, there was an incident where Mustache Man was in the sights of a British soldier, who with a swift pull of a trigger could have put Mustache Man down for good. However, he showed mercy and let him live, which later was probably a really awkward moment considering the events of World War II. This event is somewhat debated, and honestly, regardless of if he made it out to World War II or not, it was probably still going to happen. So, kind of a missed chance, I guess. Number 5. Oh, Canada. The most defining moment for Canadians of the war was Vimy Ridge, a very costly battle that not only cost many Canadians their lives, but also many other armies trying to take it. Some people like to point out that America became a country during its war for independence. Well, Canada found its national identity in the battlefields of France. All Canadian regiments were put together for the assault, men from all across the country together in a moment of glorious pride. One general is quoted as saying, "In those few moments I saw the birth of a nation." As glorious as it was, this was World War I, which means the fighting was brutal, fighting that I know I could not do. So, thank you gentlemen. There at Vimy Ridge stands a large monument to the grim day that Canada's identity was born. Number 4. Last minute valor. The war to end all wars was to end on the 11th month of the 11th day of the 11th hour, as an armistice had been signed, ending the horrible conflict that had cost millions of lives and had enough destruction to resemble the apocalypse. However, until 11 AM, things were still on, and some violence was still commenced. Probably the most ironic moment in human history was the death of Henry Gunther. Gunther hadn't had the prestigious military career he was looking for. Just minutes before the treaty would have gone into effect everywhere, Gunther spotted a German roadblock position with a machine gun, and looking for a last second of glory, rushed the position with his bayonet against the wishes of his comrades. And the Germans, who were waving with arms, pleading with him to stop. As he got closer and closer, the Germans had no choice but to cut him down with machine gun fire. The time was 10:59, 1 minute 60 seconds before it was all over, and he lost it all just for an ounce of glory. War is hell, man. Number 3. The Ottoman War. Not something that's often talked about is the other fronts of the war. Yes, it would be impossible to talk about World War I without talking about the trenches in Europe, but this was a world war and spanned many different countries and biomes. Something that I think gets looked over a lot is the British involvement with the Ottomans in the deserts of the Middle East. Also the Anzac forces at Gallipoli. Shout out to my friends down under, how are yous? But this is just a theater of war that doesn't get a lot of attention, even though it should be, considering the Ottomans lost their empire after the war was over. The war changed lines on maps everywhere, all over the globe, and set the stage for not only World War II, but politics for the rest of the 20th century. Number 2. Mistakes were made. Okay, this wasn't exactly something that happened on the battlefields of the First World War, but it happened in 1917, and it was directly related to the war, the Halifax explosion. If you know, you know. When the French cargo ship, the SS Mont Blanc, collided with another ship in the Halifax harbor, a fire had started. The ship's cargo, unfortunately, was high explosives. A lot of them. The fire eventually detonated the explosives, and the chaos that followed was astronomical. It destroyed that district of the city, with almost 2,000 civilians perishing in the explosion. It was the largest man-made explosion until the detonation of the nuclear bombs in World War II. This is why there's 1,000 rules for carrying dangerous or harmful materials. Mind you, I don't think you guys are delivering those kind of contents these days, but if you are, that's kind of cool. Number 1. The League of Losers. Okay, so the war comes to an end, and although the first party contributors to the war have stopped fighting, there's still a lot of turmoil in Europe, especially in the East and the Balkans. When sitting down at the negotiation table, 3 things happened. 1. They said that was bad. Wars cost a lot of lives. Number 2, with the use of modern technology and knowledge from that war, we as the most powerful nation should band together to form a global committee to make sure that doesn't happen again. And number 3, you suck, Germany, this is all your fault, give us your money. Stupid idea. The League of Nations was created as a beta version of the UN, except the rules suck more than they do now. And America, one of the founding members and the ones proposing all this anti-war ideas, did not join. What? Which sure, they were basically forced into the war in the first place, but come on, it soon fell apart, and you know what came next. World War II came next. It was pretty bad. It was a bad sequel. That's gonna wrap it up for me today, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe here at Bumblebee, and if you too want to be part of the League of Cool People, check out my socials linked down in the description. I've been your host, Big Ched, and stay sweet, my little honeybees. Yes, do it. Oh, Canada. Hope that's not copyrighted. She's a little bit of a doozy. Anyway, now we're talking about World War I. That's fun. That's fun. That's not fun. It was a tragedy, actually. Okay.